So I have Italy, and I think with Italy, a thing to keep in mind is that Italy was the country that was the first case outside of Wuhan, China, like outside of the nation of China. So they were caught pretty much unaware, and no one really expected the virus to spread as quickly as it did and to actually be this much like a serious virus. So some of the things that I get into play into that, but we'll go. It's kind of like Italy was blindsided, and the rest of the world's like, okay, here's what Italy did. It didn't work out that well. We should be taking this seriously. And then people started to take the problem seriously as a result of Italy. What happened to Italy? It was like the guinea pig, if you will. So basically 143,000, I think this is like maybe August 1st data, and 18,000 deaths to date. I thought it was interesting that the mortality rate in Italy itself was 9% higher than it was in China. And it could be a couple of different reasons. So like when you think of Italians, like the picture that I have in my mind is the group of Italians sitting around a table, the mom's in the kitchen making a pizza, like serving out sauce on a Sunday. I have some family that's Italian, and that's what we like to do. And it's all about like closeness and togetherness, and like getting like there's always that joke between Italians, like it's like, oh, you trying to tell me what to do, like to do something? There's just like an attitude of like they don't like being told what to do, and that deliberately makes them, as a culture, I think, not well equipped to tackle the seriousness of a pandemic, which requires you to stay isolated and to follow orders given by your government. So if we look into the fig of cases by region, we'll just see that it basically is clustered in northern Italy. Why is this the case? I would just assume that that's where the airports are, and that's where the first cases were, and wherever the first cases are that are in populated areas typically will have the most infections. Also, keep in mind, right, we don't know anything about COVID at this point. It's just gotten from China. All we know about it really is that it's a controllable and preventable virus. And, people underplayed the severity of it. So someone gets the virus, people are talking about this virus might actually be serious. It's to a group of Italians. They're like, get out of here. And it ends up being a pretty serious problem for them, as you will see. So another thing that could be contributing to the fact that the mortality rate is so high in Italy is the fact that the population itself is older. I believe I saw something like 23.1% of the population was above 80. And we know that as you get older, your immune systems get weaker. Typically, you accumulate a couple other, afflictions, whatever those will be. And it's important to know that when people die it's not that people really are dying from COVID. It's like they die with COVID. It just like makes it so that it's much more likely to die if you also have another thing interfering with your health. So policy decisions. This is kind of interesting. I think it's interesting because all we have to go off now, remember, is that China had the virus. They looked at, well, what are we going to do about it? We have the same virus. So they said, all right, well, let's look and see what China did. And China enforced very strict quarantines that were actually pretty effective. And they're effective, I think, because of two major things. The relative strength of the government. And by strength, I mean like ability to like exert its will, I suppose. The Italian government has a hard time even like passing laws, much less getting people to follow the laws. So it was kind of, I think, taken as a joke in Italy to say like, oh, what, you want us to stay indoors, like quarantine? Seriously? We're not going to do that. And as a result, this policy decision and implementation wasn't very effective. I think the people, no, that's it. Yeah, those are the two things. So shortcomings, well, just about everything was in short supply in Italy when it came to treating the virus, containing the virus. You know, there weren't enough ventilators to go around. There wasn't enough masks to go around. They couldn't even give masks to the healthcare workers. And they were admitting people into the hospitals with like very low symptoms. And if it was anything questionable, they're admitting people into these hospitals where they don't even have enough supplies to actually treat the people that needed it most. The healthcare workers themselves didn't get masks. So now if you didn't have COVID, well, now you definitely had COVID if you went into this hospital. And it was unfortunate because like then you're forced to, you know, the healthcare it almost collapsed like up in northern Italy. And you have to make really tough decisions like, well, who are we going to get this ventilator to? Whose life is more important? How do you put a dollar value on life? It's a very hard question that doesn't really have a clear answer. So I couldn't really find anything good that they did technologically. I don't know. Hopefully they are doing something, but I did not see anything. So basically, the strategy for controlling a pandemic, I think, comes down to something very simple. It's just like you need to control the spread of the virus itself. And the only way you can do that is with containment. And the only way you can contain it is to socially isolate people or to like have an effect on the physical properties of the transmission of the virus, right? Like wearing a mask would be an example. Great, everyone's on board, but it's actually a lot more complicated because people don't like being told to do, people don't like to wear masks. There's a lot at play. People don't trust the information that they're given. It's a huge problem that we're faced with in this age is these information wars and that's it, really. I think who receives the treatment. All right, are there any questions?
Let's thank Italy. Any questions?
So I was going to ask if you were in charge of policy. So you mentioned like the culture shift between or at least the culture shift in Northern Italy was just, I'm not going to take this seriously. I wouldn't want to do that. What kinds of policy would you put in place if you were in charge to get people more aware or more just conscious of the fact that this is dangerous, this is deadly, you should take this very seriously?
This is a huge problem. This is the problem we see in America. Is almost like this standoffish attitude, like, or like almost like a toughness, or I don't actually know what it is to really like describe it, but that's like that's the major problem is how do you convince people that this is a real danger and that them not following the rules is contributing to them being in a dark room by themselves, for instance. You know, I don't know, James. I think I wouldn't know other than trying to keep preaching like, you know, how much personal suffering are you willing to go, how much personal sacrifice are you for the good of many? And people have very different value structures centered around that question.
You know what? An interesting thing I noticed in the New Zealand presentation was the use of wildfire alert system, right? So people understand that, they already have a perception of that and repurposing it for COVID. Say in the southern states of the United States, like they have hurricanes, right? And people have hurricane alerts and they do respond to that, right? So they hoard food for a few days and like there's a hurricane outside. Okay, I don't need to be convinced that I cannot go out, much less I cannot drag someone else out with me, right? But that's basically what it does, like when people go out without masks, right? So I wonder if, you know, some clever ideas like that, repurposing existing alert systems that people already respond to, perhaps like, you know, you might need to improvise, and that might be, you know, an interesting way to look at it. I found New Zealand's idea very interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting right there.
One question that we could try to answer, why Italy from China? Why Italy? And there is some speculation that in the northern Italy, there's a lot of leather industry where folks from China work. And during lunar year, many of them travel back to China. And when they return, I think they might have transmitted the disease. So that's one speculation to see
think
why Italy
there
was.
is another speculation that there was a football match between an Italian club and a Spanish club, and that's where the virus got exploded and it traveled to Spain as well.
That's interesting. It's like 50,000 people, I
Yeah.
think, at that game.
Yeah. Another interesting fact is the northern Italy is more economically stable. They have more rich people. So in United States, we see that the poor people are suffering more, but it's the opposite in Italy. So do you have any explanation to that?
I think the northern people of Italy could be also usually it takes time to acquire wealth, and so that population is also, I would think, more older. I guess we'd have to look at, is it the older people of the impoverished country, or the impoverished? Is it just the old people are suffering and the rich and poor isn't as important? I guess that would be what I'd be interested in seeing, but that's interesting.